Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay. Let me check my volume. Again, I don't know how long this one is going to be. This one is probably going to be relatively quick. And I'm saying relatively quick because it's more so an opinion more than a news story, even though it is a news story. Look, first, I want to thank everyone for everything, all the help with the channel. I mean, whether you share, like, get honest critiques, all that stuff goes in line with allowing me to do this show. It's funny, I started looking at it as a show. It's weird. It's just weird, that's all. You look at it almost as, when we first started doing it, it's just, I'm just giving my opinion. And then at some point, it becomes a show. It's weird. My wife and I watched Glow last night. We watched it from one series to the next. Thing is amazing. Binge watched it, and I realized that in the same way that they go about their way of doing that show, this is for all intents and purposes something very similar, if not just smaller. So, you guys let me do it. That's my point. I'm sorry, I chop a lot of wood to try to make the points my wife, so he always try to give too many examples. So, Manny Petty, again, like being pampered, not ashamed of it. And I'm reading news stories, and one of the news stories that catches my eye is this. Labor headquarters used Facebook ads to deceive Jeremy Corbyn during the election campaign. I read it a few times. I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. Labor headquarters used Facebook ads to deceive Jeremy Corbyn during the election campaign. It wasn't the Russians. It wasn't those crafty French. It wasn't the Germans. It wasn't some angry Ukrainians that angry at Jeremy Corbyn because he didn't take the hint for not just kind of jumping on the Skirples bandwagon. He wanted evidence and proof. No. Labor. And in a moment, you're going to say, well, wait a minute. I feel like Jeremy Corbyn was labor. Jeremy Corbyn is labor. They attacked their own head. They attacked their party leader. That's amazing. New Labor Blairites attacked and sabotaged the election of Jeremy Corbyn. I'm saying it multiple times because it blows me away to say it. The way the words fall out of my mouth and the way they get into my ears, it blows me away. And I have to immediately calm myself down as I say this, because I realize it's immensely enraging just by the very thought of it. I think at this moment I screamed to my wife because everything that was in me at this point was rattling out. And I said, they cheated Jeremy Corbyn. They put a knife in him. They went to the closet and grabbed the largest knife that they can find, and they just rammed it in, smiling in his face as they grabbed his ass, ramming the knife in further and further. They didn't like the campaign he was running, and they disagreed with him. And because they disagreed with him, they targeted ads to be specific to him, meaning he would see the specific ads that he wanted to see because of the circle and the bubble to which he existed, while the bulk of it went out something else. They lied to their leader, and in lying to their leader, put out a campaign that was different than the campaign he was trying to run. That is amazing. That is amazing. You must understand how amazing that is. That's mind-blowing. Think about what's taking place here. Jeremy Corbyn is leader of the opposition, and the leader of the opposition is trying to run a particular campaign, and the people who are around him, Blairites at the headquarters of Labour, don't like that campaign. He's too much of a lefty. How could we run the campaign while at the same token not letting him know we're running the campaign? I know, let's just target ads that he'd see and pretend, and he'd believe that it was taking place. This revelation comes out in a book that's just come out. That's mind-blowing. That's mind blowing. Let's read the story first. Let's read the story first. When people say and take the position that Blairites and Clintons would rather lose to somebody who's a Tory or right-winger as opposed to have a lefty win that office, oh God, they mean it. They mean it. I mean, let's stop pretending that we're on the same side here. After all, you call yourself New Labour, creating a distinction between what Labour is versus what you are. And in this case, acting as if you're from a different party, you stab your party member in the back. Stab him in the back. Wow, that's amazing. You know, Tony Blair drove Labour into a ditch, took a dump in the car, and made Gordon Brown senator. The rest of that party fell apart under the leadership, if you want to call it leadership, of Tony Blair. Now, Corbyn is the one that is bringing that party back from oblivion. And look at what they do. Look at what they do. By the same token, you don't believe that they would do the same thing here with Sanders? There's a fundamental problem in the way of the incrementalists. Meaning the people who are in the government itself and who are in these parties and the incremental, the moderates of the party. So people who don't fully know who they are, or at the very least can't espouse it freely because of other constraints that are put on them, whether they accept it or things, what is in me versus what is on me from my external constraints. I like people who know who they are. Let me know who you are. Are you a right winger? Are you a believer? Are you a true believer? These people, for the most part, the incrementalists, they don't understand corrections. Meaning, you get to a point where your society goes through a correction. Your society says, I've had enough of this. Now, in our country, in the United States, those people, the incrementalists, have a problem. If they lose their seats, and if they lose that seat to a lefty, and a lefty actually does something with the seat, meaning they take government back to the way the government was supposed to be run when the people were in office, actually to get things done. Not to sit around with their thumb in their ass, but to actually get things done. Well, the incrementalists doesn't believe they can get things done, or at the very least, they only think they can get things done on the edges. I think that's somewhat problematic, especially when you're at a time when people actually want to get things done. You're in a correction. Now, I'd say correction from the standpoint of your society says, we want something else. It's clear, it's unequivocal. You have a goddamn rock star in your party, and look at you, gumming up the works. Gumming up the works. And right now, when Theresa May's government is about to collapse, apparently, there's some Tory members that are willing to potentially join hands with Labour to prop that woman up, as opposed to having a Corbyn government potentially taking hold. With friends like these, if Labour, real Labour, gets their hands on the governmental edifice, and if real Labour actually does things with that edifice. Now understand, you've been told from the new Labour, whatever the hell that is, that Labour can't get things done. We're beyond that time. We're past that time. There's nothing that can be done other than what we are. We are the definitive left, then this is the best that you can get. The rise of the incrementalists, the radical incrementalists. If that is found to be a fallacy, if that falls apart, and it says, holy shit, look at what you could have gotten done if you had somebody who actually believed that you can get things done. You understand that the idea of the incrementalist falls apart. This idea of the moderate changes. What becomes a moderate changes. Your political spectrum is always going to be there, but the spectrum moves to the left. You can have a different world. You can have a different country. The Blairites, the moderates, those people will gum up the works. The same way that they've done here, putting a knife in the back of Jeremy Corbyn. They will do the same thing in the United States. The moment that they're found to be failures, and the moment that they found that their ideology is bankrupt, what it means to be a Democrat, what it means to be a Labour, changes. Now, I personally believe that change can take place. But people like this, or let's just say the party itself, need not to gum up the works for that to take place. And there becomes a fight for it, apparently, as the society tries to move, and the elements of labor, or the elements of the Democratic Party that believes that it still want to put its thumb on the scale and maintain control of the edifice, does what it can, put its fingernails as it goes away as the public tries to get something else. This story is amazing. And there should be consequences for this. There's no reason why this should fly. There's no reason why this should fly. Let's go through the story. I'm sorry. This is aggravating to me to hear this. Aggravating to me to hear this. The people who fucked it up have great ideas on how to fix it. I bet you do. Labor officials ran a secret operation to deceive Jeremy Corbyn at last year's general election, micro-targeting Facebook adverts at the leader and his closest aides to convince them that the party was running the campaign he demanded. Campaign chief at headquarters hoodwinked their own leader because they disapprove of some of Corbyn's left-wing messages. They convinced him that they were following his campaign plans by spending just £5,000 on adverts solely designed to be seen by Corbyn and his aides and their favorite journalists, while pouring far more money into adverts with different messages for ordinary voters. This ruse is revealed in the new book, Control, Alt, Delete, How Politics and the Media Crashed Our Democracy by Tom Baldwin, who served as Ed Miliband's Director of Communications. The affair lays bare the degree to which adverts on social media can be targeted just at a few people. Corbyn aides sometimes demanded big spending on Facebook advertising for prep projects, with Southsiders, officials at Labour headquarters, regarded as a waste of money, Baldwin writes. He quotes an official explaining they wanted to spend a fortune on some schemes, like the one they had to encourage voter registration, but we only had to spend about £5,000 to make sure Jeremy people and some journalists and bloggers saw it, and there was on Facebook. And if it was there for them, they thought it must be there for everyone. It wasn't. That's how targeted ads can work. The Sunday Times has verified the existence of the deception operation with two labor sources familiar with the Facebook adverts. Writing in the Sunday Times tomorrow, Baldwin argues that the political adverts should be banned from social media when the leader in the political party can be tricked in such a fashion by his own officials. Voters themselves stand little chance. The book details how Hillary Clinton used 66,000 different Facebook adverts during the presidential election, which sounds like a lot until compared to Trump's total of 5.9 million. Baldwin writes, there were days when the Trump campaign varied ads more often than the Clinton campaign did in the course of a whole campaign. He goes on, Britain had a tradition stretching back to the 1950s that bars political advertisings appearing on TV. British politics has been better for it, and we cannot allow an even more insidious form of advertising to take over now. A Labour source said, despite fighting with one hand tied behind our backs by some uncooperative senior staff, we achieved the largest increase in the Labour vote since 1945, and the next election we will have a fantastic cooperative party machine to match our incredible mass membership and popular policies. That's not the point. That's not the point. You could put a nice spin on it. That's not the point. That is so not the point. They lost. The Blairites lost. They tried to take you out that seat twice. And you've had elections where you've increased the number of people that were associated with Labour to mythic proportions. They lost. And not being content with their failure and their losing. Look at them fucking around in the election process itself, stabbing you in the back. That being said, this could be a political way of saying it, but despite the infighting next time around, we will have a cooperative party machine. I'm not going to rant. I'm not going to rave. I made my point early in this. There are elements that don't want to go away. I'll say it that way. We're in for a correction. We're in for a correction. And just to make a last point, I don't think the corrections are about incrementalism. I think it's the opposite. I think when you get the public that's primed for change, you knock that shit out of the park. So when Corbyn says there is a different world that's possible, you get behind him and say, fuck yeah! And you push in the exact same direction, seeing as you've had Tory rule for God knows how long. And the same thing applies to the United States. When Donald Trump finishes stinking up the White House, the person who comes into power after that should swing for the fences. Should swing for the fences. I'll leave it here. I don't want this one to go too long. But Labor backstabbed their own... Where's my thing? Labor backstabbed their own leader of the opposition. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'll end it here. Like I said, I don't want to keep this one too long. So, alright guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. I'll probably be back momentarily. I had a few stories that I wanted to do today. So, I'll see you shortly. Thanks guys.